Hey pillars, and welcome back to another cycling video. We're talking about the tech of the Gravel World Championships. How is it that the top 3 podium positions were not on a gravel bike for a Gravel World Championship? So I'm pretty fired up because now that the race is over, more tech pictures have been released and I'm in my gravel flannel. We got the backwards hat. I'm pumped, ready to basically roast this gravel race. I made a full recap how the race was won, so check that out on my channel. But we do have the tech side. I'm going to break down the men's setups and also the women's, so let's jump right into it. Now, jumping into the article, all the articles I take a look at will be in the description down below, so feel free to check it out for yourself. But it says, a road bike wins the Gravel Worlds. Gianni Vermeersch for Belgium. Spoiler alert, I made a full recap on my channel. Feel free to check it out. He used a gravel tune Canyon Ultimate CFR, which is the bike we have on screen. Now, I think it's because of the poor course selection that all the top contenders opted for a road bike geometry and frame because they didn't want to sacrifice speed and performance because of the fact that this was a very fast rolling course, meaning that the gravel sections were hard packed, meaning that the rolling is going to be fast on that. There's a lot of asphalt as well, and the technical sections were, not intense enough like something that you would see in Unbound, so they all opted to have the performance gains of a road bike but just putting on wider tires for the gravel niche of the course. So the winner, Gianni Vermeersch, rides for Canyon, and his teammate Mathieu van der Poel also rides for Canyon, so they were both on the Ultimate, where usually you would see from Canyon the Grail, which is that weird double decker handlebar situation, and the Grizzle, which is for bike packing. But the new Canyon Ultimate, which was launched early in September, has wider tire clearance, and this is something I've always said on my channel. I've ridden gravel as well. I always said that it's going to be just a matter of time that road bikes, the performance ones in terms of like race bikes, are going to have wide enough tire clearance where you start seeing it 36, 37, 38, like big enough tire clearance where you can basically get away with majority of gravel. Now, I understand from riding gravel myself, sometimes you do want to put, a 40C, 42C tire, but for majority of situations, a 32 is more than enough, honestly, especially if it's not like crazy gravel. So the fact that you can basically get away with a road bike, you can do all your road racing, all your crits on it, and then slap on just wider tires for a gravel race, to me, it just blows my mind, because at that point you have like a dual bike where you can do gravel, you can do road, and if you really want to ride both, you can just have that 32C, have an in-between tire that has a little bit of tread for the gravel, enough slickness where it's not going to be super slow rolling on the asphalt, and then you have a bike that basically does it all. Now, this is where it gets interesting because it always comes down to tire selection and size. So Vermeersch, the winner, he chose a 35 for the back and a 33 at the front, which I would say is more than enough. I was riding 42 and I thought that was really comfortable, but if it had sections where you are on asphalt, 42 is going to be a lot slower than 33. So I think in terms of the bike being able to basically run, that setup is amazing just because you get the dual pro benefits of both. Now, the article says basically what I was just saying before. It says, however, the evolution of the best road bikes, notably the adoption of disc brakes and the increased tire clearance that has followed, has enabled top-tier race machines to feature when just a few years ago, an event such as this would have been the preserve of cyclocross or gravel bikes. And I totally agree with that. I was racing or riding, I wanted to race gravel, but I was using a cyclocross bike and I put 42mm tires. I was totally fine. I didn't have to get a gravel specific bike, and it was just cool that I could do both things. Now, with the fact that road bikes are majority disc brakes, you can't really do that on a rim brake bike. You can't put 35Cs on it. So the fact that you can get a disc brake bike, basically use as your road setup, your gravel setup, I think that honestly is the way of the future. Now, in terms of the marketing side of stuff, I do want to touch up on that too. I think for a Gravel World Championships, the fact that majority of riders were not using gravel bikes, I think that's a huge failure for the sponsorships of the teams that make the bikes, because that's just a lost PR ability, because you're pushing, oh, you need this gravel bike, you can't use a road bike with bigger tires, you need a specific gravel bike, it's way more comfortable. But then you see these top tier racers winning gravel worlds on a road bike just with bigger tires. Now, I've sold gravel bikes in the past, and I do believe that the geometry and the technology that they do have on gravel bikes is obviously designed for gravel. So for the normal customer getting into gravel, doesn't really care about road cycling, I think that bike will suit them a lot better than having a road bike just with the wider tires. But at the same time, for the performance aspect of the Gravel World Championships, the pros want every increase of performance, every marginal gain. So I'm not surprised with such a flat course in terms of fast rolling course that they chose road bikes over gravel bikes. Now, Vermeersch's bike was opted with a Dura-Ace Di2 with a double crankset. In terms of the setup, I think it was a semi-compact, so a 5236, which is great. Even on these gravel roads, like that's hard packed. Like you can roll in that very fast, and with 33C tires, like that's more than enough. He had an 1134 tooth cassette at the back, which is great for anything that you really need to get over. Like you're totally fine for this setup. And looking at the bike, it basically just looks like a road bike just with the bigger tires. Now, just to close out the facts, top 3 positions for men's elite gravel was all won on a road bike, but with bigger tires. And I do want to show this bike because this bike is sexy. Lachlan Morden, you know him in the sport in terms of alternate. Cannondale Super 6, so Evo SE, which is a road bike. Look how deep dish those rims are. That shows you how fast this course was. And you can just see how that's a beautiful paint job. I'm in love with this color scheme. But basically, it just shows you. I just want to go through this whole article of showing the different bikes in terms of the setups. Because in gravel, I guess you can't have an out front mount because they tape the number at the front, the number plate. And then this is Magnus Cort Nielsen, Cannondale Super 6 Evo as well. Different color scheme. He basically is running a similar setup with deep dish rims. Now, Peter Sagan and Daniel Oss were both running Roubaix, but Matt Beers, he used a specialized S-Works Crux. So there are some riders that used, gravel-ish specific bikes, but not all of them. If we look at the female side, the winner, which was Pauline Prévost, BMC, this is a newly released gravel bike. So the female side was actually won on a gravel bike, but then again, this is a newly released gravel bike, which has the benefits of having, it's supposed to be very lightweight and aero influence. So it's this weird transitional thing that I want to talk about where gravel bikes are getting so niche down. Like you have gravel bikes made for really big gravel, then you have kind of gravel bikes that are lightweight bikes, but then at that point kind of just remind their aero, so it does not just mean a road bike at that point. Like it gets very niche down and confusing. So I want to just share my thoughts on how to decide what gravel bike that you should get if you're getting into gravel or even road cycling. Now, I'm going to draw the line here and say this. Unless you're doing specific gravel rides and you live in an environment where the rocks are just insane, then obviously getting a specific gravel geometry is very smart. If you're going to do gravel grinders and just do long courses on the bike where comfort is important, you're doing bike packing as well, then a gravel specific frame I think is a win-win. Now when it comes to racing or just gravel that is not too intense, like nothing like Flint in terms of unbound, then I think having a road bike with 33C tires for hard packed sections, single track, like I've done it all on 42s and I would say it was a lot slower than if I would have had 33. So I think in the future, like I'll probably do the same thing. I'm gonna get a road bike with disc brakes and have wider tires and do gravel and road cycling on it. So I think this shows you right now that a lot of the marketing that we've been sold in terms of having a gravel specific bike is probably a lie for majority of gravel cycling in your local area. But for the people that are purely going to get into gravel and grinders and all that stuff, then gravel is needed. Now I'm going to leave it there, and I want to be positive, but I really hated this course for the first Gravel World Championships. It didn't give me the oomph that I wanted from gravel and being, somewhat of a gravel purist. But I am happy that the money is going into the sport, the broadcasting is going into the sport, the hype's coming up. They had big names at the event, so I think it was a good event overall. But in terms of next year's course, I really hope that it is a better course selection. So I do hope they change it and make it better. But obviously, at the end of the day, I'm happy that we even have the rainbow bands for gravel. And in terms of the tech, I think this is very telling, but it will be interesting to see as the years progress in terms of the racing of gravel and we can see the different courses, what riders choose for gains, like marginal gains. Do they choose the road bike frame with wider tires or do they go for the gravel specific frame? And will the companies, in terms of the manufacturers of bikes, will they force their riders onto gravel bikes? Now, I'll give you a quick example of what I mean. I was using a Giant TCX, which is a cyclocross bike with wider tires, and I really liked how snappy it felt, but obviously for certain sections, it was more cyclocross in terms of the snappiness, where for gravel, it's like long days on the bike, but I wanted to race both. But then when I compared it to the Revolt at the time, I don't know if Giant has made improvements to the Revolt, which I'm pretty sure they did, but the Revolt just felt a lot more sluggish. Like I wanted something more racy feeling. So it really depends on the rider's preferences and the course selection, all that stuff. So gravel is very, very niche specific, and I'm excited to see how the sport grows in terms of now it being at the World Tour level in terms of athletes competing. So if you guys did like this quick tech video, smash a like, subscribe to the channel, more coming onto the channel, and until the next one, keep on pedaling.